All right, hello everybody. I am Laylah Funk. I am with the Dormy. I am their brand voice manager, so I am very lucky to work with our in-house creative team that is behind the curation of all of our creatives that I'm going to walk you through today. If you're not familiar with the Dormy, we are a lingerie and intimate apparel brand, so bras and panties will be a topic of discussion during today's presentation, just so you know. We were founded in 2010 to bring extended sizes and plus size into the lingerie category, and we were the first brand to do so, and since then we've kind of extended into swimwear, sleepwear, loungewear, the works. So, before I dive really into the nitty-gritty of this case study, I want to give you a brief overview of how a Dormy typically leverages digital out-of-home. In terms of time, as a lingerie brand, for obvious reasons, Valentine's Day is like our Super Bowl. So we always do a very big push around February and end of January. We also prioritize Christmas a lot, and every once in a while New York Fashion Week if we have a big show going on. In terms of geographical market, we always prioritize the cities that we see the most customer spend in. This, of course, varies year to year, but what's really consistent for us is that New York, LA, and Dallas actually see a lot of spend. So we prioritize those cities almost every year. And then as far as real estate goes, we have done any combination of all of the following listed: urban panels, Link NYC stations, LED trucks, digital spectaculars, the works. Depending on the year and depending on the creative that we have that year, we will do any combination of these. So for our most recent holiday and Valentine's Day campaign, our big objective was to drive brand awareness and sales. And I know that's like, duh, obviously that's what you want to do with a digital out-of-home campaign. But the last year actually raised a handful of challenges that made this specific objective a little bit harder to reach. So, in winter 2023, the retail industry experienced a general decline in consumer spend. Student loan repayments were amping back up. People were starting to repay their loans back. Interest rates were really, really high. There was this general, like, is there going to be a recession? Is there not? People were just spending less across the industry. And this is especially true for things that kind of fall under the nice-to-have category as opposed to the need-to-have category. Lingerie falls under the nice-to-have, not the need-to-have. The second challenge was just breaking through the additional advertising noise that is generally generated during the holiday season. This is a struggle that every brand kind of has to deal with, especially during the holiday season, but because there are so many brands that are doing the exact same thing as us in terms of promoting more and more during Christmas specifically, maybe not so much as Valentine's Day, but Christmas specifically, it was really, really important for us that we break through that noise. And the third was coordinating our digital out-of-home campaign with other platforms' campaigns. This is something that was a little bit new for us last year, and we didn't typically use the same creative asset that we use for digital out-of-home across every channel up and down the funnel. It was really important for us to do that this past year because we really wanted to drive home the message and create a lot of cohesion across every single platform. Every time a customer saw our brand, we wanted it to look generally the same, and we wanted to drive home the same message. So, speaking of all the different channels that we would use this leverage, or we would leverage this asset for, we kind of created this 360 campaign wheel, and it's become our Northern Star, actually, whether it's a really small campaign or a large one for Valentine's Day. These are all the other traditional marketing channel funnels that we prioritize, and it covers everything from social media, acquisition, SEO, the works, you name it. Typically, when you're thinking about these different channels, the creative, either visually or logistically, is just different because you have to cater to that specific channel. So this is where we had to think about what we were going to do with our digital out-of-home creative a little bit differently than we would have in the past. So this is the creative that we landed on. It's very fun, it's very cute. The biggest thing that we wanted to do here, and Steve mentioned this earlier, is that we wanted to make the Adore Me brand name memorable and noticeable. We wanted that to be the first thing you saw when you saw it. It's super, super easy to see an ad and then, you know, like you remember it, you like it, and then you're like, wait, what was the brand's name again? We did not want that to be the case. The first thing you see is Adore Me. It's almost the only thing you see. We wanted the models to be able to play around and interact with the name because it's more than just a brand name, it's a statement. And we wanted to make that very clear. Another thing we wanted to drive home is that because we were using this across so many different platforms, we wanted it to kind of not stop you in your tracks, but you want to take a second glance, you want to remember it. Whether you are in Times Square, whether you're scrolling on Instagram, whether you're opening a customer email, like a marketing email in your inbox, we wanted you to take a second glance at this creative, no matter where you were seeing it. And then in terms of messaging and copy, we have our tagline at the end. We are driving home our value props of lingerie in 67 plus sizes, it's so you. So we kind of have everything that encapsulates our brand and hopefully to work across every channel right here in this creative. So in terms of digital out of home, this is our execution. Pictured, you can see New York, LA, and Vegas. We were also present in Chicago and Dallas, I believe, this year. And you can see that we we were all over the place. We had Link NYC stations, we were in the subway, we were in the taxi cabs, we had digital spectaculars. And that wasn't just like us trying to be everywhere all at once. That really was a little bit of a calculated decision, and I'll walk you through that. So our audience is a cost-conscious and value-driven woman, probably in New York, LA, Vegas, or Dallas, not unlike the people in the Adore Me office at all, actually. So we all sat down and kind of brainstormed, like, okay, when do we want to be targeted by an ad, and when can we be targeted by an ad? We always say that in order for somebody to remember you as a brand, they need to see you at least 7 times. So we were like, where are we throughout the day, and where can an ad be placed for us, along the day, 7 times a day? So we all take the subway, we all walk to the office, we need a cab when we are, after a night out, we take a cab home, we run around the city, we go for walks, and we kind of every single person in the office kind of agreed on this, like we all do all of these things. And based on that, we decided to do subway entrance screens because we take the subway, Link NYC stations because we walk to the office and we pass those all the time, LED taxi toppers because we all hail cabs, digital taxi screens inside the actual car because once you hail a cab, you gotta get into it, and then digital spectaculars and LED mobile media because regardless of where you are in the city, those are they're mobile, they're going around, you're bound to run into one regardless. And then as far as consistency across platforms goes, again, this is something new that we did. We have never before utilized a digital out-of-home creative across every single platform, and it was really interesting to see this year. So here you can see we have it on website, email, social media. This is just the most prominent ones, but we really had it across the board, up and down the funnel. We featured these creatives in over 15 email campaigns, and this is just marketing email campaigns. This is not transactional. Over 20 social media posts across Instagram and TikTok, and this is not including paid acquisition. This is just organic social media. One thing I want to note here that is really important is that as a lingerie brand, we have an inherently provocative product, so we tend to run into censorship issues. And different channels will allow us to push that envelope a little bit further than other ones will. So for example, in emails, we can pretty much do whatever we want. We can go as explicit as we want, and it's not really a huge issue. That doesn't fly on Instagram, and that certainly does not fly on TikTok. So we have to cater to each channel specifically. And our customers really do respond very well to provocative language, they respond to sexy creatives, they really, really respond and engage well with things that are a little bit more provocative. So our goal here was to create an asset that works across, again, every single platform that is sexy and it's fun, but it's not explicit the way sometimes they're used to. So now to the fun stuff, the impact. The first thing we saw that in and this is just for digital out-of-home, by the way. This is not for any of the other channels. In a 3-day look-back window, people exposed to the digital out-of-home campaign were 193 more likely to convert and make a purchase, and 157% more likely to visit adoreme.com. And this was all tracked based on cell phone data, and we had a control group of users that were in a specific area code where there was there was an Adore Me ad, but they were not exposed to it. And then the exposed group obviously was in that same zip code, but was actually exposed to the ad, and we saw really, really great results here. The 150% more likely to visit adoreme.com was obviously tracked by them. Were they on adoreme.com after they were exposed to the ad? And the conversion rate was tracked by where they landed on the thank you page, which is what you get after you make an actual purchase on adoreme.com. So we saw really, really great results with this. And then the second point of impact here is that the digital out-of-home campaign had 18.7 million impressions, which is really, really great for us. The entire campaign started in the beginning of November, and it ended right at the end of December, and then we picked back up in January for Valentine's Day. So we saw really, really great results here. So in terms of findings, the most prominent one I think here is that the campaign had the strongest impact during the first 3 to 14 days of running, and we were actually able to adjust real time to this finding. So after 2 weeks, we would switch out the creatives to something different and new and refreshing. It still generally looked the same. It had the same branding. It had the same messaging. You can tell that it was still Adore Me, but it was a new and refreshing creative because we were able to get this insight after 14 days. This one's not too surprising, but there was a high correlation between audiences visiting the website after being exposed to the digital out-of-home campaign and making a purchase, of course. The formats that drove the most website visits were LED mobile media trucks and urban panels. This one was a little bit new to me. I wasn't expecting it, but the LED mobile trucks work really, really well for us. I think just seeing lingerie on a truck driving around the city is definitely enticing. And the cities with the largest populations, of course, LA, New York City, and Dallas drove the largest impact. And then I think just like the overall conclusion here, which was a new turning point for Adore Me, and I think a lot of brands like Adore Me, is that traditionally these traditional marketing channels, things like email, social acquisition, would drive your digital out-of-home campaign. It would drive that creative. It would kind of be your Northern Star and tell you what to do with that creative and what it should look like. Now we're kind of at a turning point where brands like Adore Me are using digital out-of-home to drive their traditional marketing creatives, and it's really working, and we're really seeing a large impact. And that is all I have for you guys.
All right, thanks, Layla. We have some time for questions. Anyone? Don't be shy. Albert, we'll call on you if you do not. Oh, right up front. Here we go. Remind us who you are and where you're from. Are you on? What number is that one? What number is that? Let's do this one here.
Adrian, we're at Group M. So, firstly, great case study. Thanks
Thank you.
for taking us through that. I'm curious to know. I have two questions. One, how did you, as a brand, decide that digital out of home was going to be a channel that you wanted to activate on, especially if you hadn't done much of it in prior years? And then, secondly, you mentioned in the findings the 3 to 14 day window of effectiveness. Is that something that now in the improvements for the next campaign, you're going to have more rounds of creative rotation? Like, how are you guys approaching how to develop creative to basically repeat that 3 to 14 day, effectiveness measure of it's most effective creative at that time?
Yeah, your first question, for the last few years, we've done digital out of home, so it wasn't entirely new to us this year. In the past, we've done a lot of CTV, which we've migrated away from, and we're actually looking to migrate towards again in the coming years. But digital out of home and in general wasn't too new to us. What was new to us was expanding it across all of our different channels, and that was mostly because we wanted a lot of consistency. We wanted it was actually more about brand awareness and less about sales. We wanted people to remember us. We wanted to become more of a household name instead of people being like, oh, I know Adore Me. I've seen their Facebook ads. I've seen their acquisition. So we wanted to migrate away from that. So that was what was really driving this kind of migration across all platforms. In terms of the 3 to 14 day window, yes, that will definitely impact how many creatives and how many different segments we create in the future. I think last year we had about 10 different creatives for Valentine's Day and 10 different creatives for Christmas, we will definitely increase that this year because, based on, we'll be in multiple locations. We don't want them all to look the exact same. So yeah, we're definitely going to be increasing the different types of creatives in the coming years.
Anyone else? Because I may have one. You have one, sir?
Oh, wait, I got you.
You have one, sir?
Yep, do it.
Laylah, since you mentioned you have a pretty tight understanding of how many impressions it takes to move people, did you have any sense from the measurements that you were doing here how many out-of-home impressions were triggering people? And another part of this is, were you trying to capture people at different parts of the city in different places, or were you trying to cluster these so you were actually kind of dominating a space in different screens?
Yeah, so in the past, we have done a little bit more personalization in terms of location and messaging according to that location. This time, we were just kind of trying to target all the high traffic areas in the city, and not only in New York City, but in every city that we were in. So obviously that includes Times Square, includes Midtown, all of the really, Soho, all of the really high traffic areas. One thing that we do need to consider, depending on the area of the city and depending on the city itself, again, is censorship. Not everybody wants to see a lingerie ad at 9 a.m. when they're taking their kid to school, so that's something that we need to consider. Anything kind of goes in Times Square, anything kind of goes in Vegas, but depending on the location, we do have to be considerate, and we have a general responsibility to the public to be considerate about what we're putting on the screens on what time of day. And then in terms of impressions, the 18.7 million was all digital out of home, so that had that was all digital.
Did you have any sense of how many multiple exposures?
We did, yeah. So we did a little bit of heat mapping, and we were able to attribute like when the user saw the actual ad and when they were actually able to make it to the landing page and make it to the thank you page. So we did do a little bit of analysis on that.
Okay. So I did want to ask a question. First thing, I love the fact that when you talked about screen activation, you tied it to simple human behaviors. People walk to work on a subway. The exposure point is X. Turn it on. Mm-hmm. And I think people are making it more complicated than it is. I do love how the creative was very playful. It was a separator because the models were playful, but they played with the brand literally in the execution. I would love to, and to me that's a separator. A lot of brands don't play with their own brand and naming in the execution, which, as you said, makes it memorable because they were shoving the words and squeezing and kicking the letters. Did you all have internal strategy conversations about how out of home can turn the creative conversation, the story, as a separator? Because look, you can't do that in a 300 by 50 banner. So I was curious, is that part of the thinking of there are risks we can take here as a canvas that can really showcase good creative thinking that other aspects of marketing, in particular digital, just flat out don't allow?
Yeah.
And how that kind of played into some of the ideation.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there were large conversations about that. Of course, we wanted the brand name to be the first thing you notice, and we wanted it to be very interactive with the entire asset. But another conversation that we had within the team that really only digital out of home can uphold is that consumer behavior is changing so much and it's changing so rapidly that we can forecast and we can predict what we think it's going to look like next week or tomorrow, but we don't really know. One thing that stays consistent, though, is not consumer behavior, but human behavior. So we tried to target, people as humans and not consumers when we were thinking of this. So 2 things about human behavior that pretty much never changes is that you want a real life experience. I think this is even more the case now that we're all addicted to our phones. And then we also love storytelling. It's the reason that we subscribe to Netflix. It's the reason we read books. It's why we gossip. So we love a story. So if you can tell a story and do it, if you can use your creative to tell a story and you can do it in real life, like while they are living their lives, then inherently you should have a good creative, regardless of what consumer behavior looks like that day.
We got one more back here.
Great job, Laylah. What I love about you and the...
Who are you?
Oh, sorry, Ian Dallamore, Lamar Advertising. Laylah, what I love about you is 2 years ago you presented at this conference. You fully embraced digital out of home, and then you've kind of continued to reiterate and evolve. The question is the amount of first-party data that you sit on, the amount of subscribers that you have. I know the focus for this campaign is large markets. Do you ever see an evolution where you're utilizing maybe programmatic digital out-of-home, where you're very finite with maybe your email subscribers, we've discussed like Kansas City, like random cities where you see these massive spikes to kind of turn on and turn off Adore Me campaigns in the out-of-home
Yeah,
space?
that's a good question. We actually use a lot of that data to determine like where the bulk of our customer spend is. For example, we have one bra, it's like our best-selling bra, it's called the Ginger, and it has like a big untieable bow on the front of it. And to all of our surprise, that bra sold the best in the state of Alaska. Not sure what's going on with Alaska, but that's really useful information. We don't do digital out of home in Alaska, but if we were to, that's the product that we would feature. But to answer your question, yes, all our customers respond. We have different segments of customers, and they all respond a little bit differently to different products. So we segment by age, we segment by geographical location and stuff like that, and we're able to see, like, if you are in Kansas City and you clicked on an email that featured the Ginger bra, we're able to see that, and we're able to kind of reallocate our assets accordingly.
All right. Well, a big round of applause for Laylah. Laylah, great job.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.